A time comes on Earth when people find themselves in a massive 140-story bunker. Who built it and why they are forced to hide is unknown, as all information has been destroyed. One day, however, a man goes outside and discovers a shocking truth, raising more questions than answers. Sheriff Holston removes his badge, sets things in order, and steps out onto the shelter's galleries. No one knows why they are here, who built the shelter, or when it will be safe to go outside. In his office, Holston writes a letter, locks the gate behind him, and throws away the key. He tells his astonished deputy, Marnes, that he wants to join his wife, whose body lies behind a dusty porthole. A request to leave the shelter means voluntary exile, which is essentially a death sentence. While Marnes seeks approval for the sheriff's request, he recalls when they received permission to have a child. The couple was congratulated, but then Gloria, an eccentric elderly woman, approaches their table, promising to help Allison. Holston drives her away. How could a childless woman help them? Later, a doctor removes a contraceptive capsule from Allison, giving her the chance to become a mother. This is their last attempt. Days pass, but the couple has no success. One day, Allison posts an article about deleted files from old storage devices, breaking the ban on restoring relics. She doesn't understand why it's forbidden to post information about materials erased by rebels, especially when the mayor constantly reminds everyone of the importance of history and generational memory. But law enforcers send anyone found with relics to the mines. Holston asks her to abide by the law, warning that if a handful of violators decide to open the hatch and see the outside world, the shelter will be doomed. Allison disagrees, but has other worries. She still can't get pregnant. Freedom Day arrives, a holiday celebrated after the last rebellion. The mayor of the bunker is concerned that the external lens is increasingly dirty. On one hand, this indicates no criminals are among the residents who are sent out to clean it, but on the other hand, people should be able to see the outside world. Meanwhile, Gloria lures Allison into her room, asking about broken servers and burned books, doubting the rebels did it. She informs Allison that she will not be allowed to have children. That same day, Allison receives a work order for the city programmer, George's workshop. He greets her enthusiastically, having read her post, and shows her an old hard drive that he can't open. Allison accepts the task. The mayor delivers a speech praising the shelter's laws, remembering that 140 years ago, they forbade the rebels from opening the doors to the outside world. The rebels destroyed all information about life before, but the founding heroes saved the remnants of civilization. Allison manages to open the drive but is frightened and leaves, asking George to destroy the relic. He examines the entire shelter plan and finds a mysterious tunnel at the bottom. Allison joins her fellow citizens in honoring their ancestors by launching sky lanterns, but her mind is preoccupied with recent events. The next day, Allison visits Gloria to learn why she was denied children. Later, she goes to George, asking him to show her everything. After opening one of the files, the pair is stunned. So this is what's outside. Returning home, Allison receives a doctor's invitation, but Holston waits in vain at the reception. Allison never shows up. The man rushes home and finds his wife sitting at the table. She tells him that people like her will never be allowed to have children because the leaders want obedient citizens. She shows him the contraceptive capsule she removed herself. The doctor deceived them. Seeing the blood, Holston rushes to find the doctor. But while he is gone, Allison goes to the communal dining room, accusing the government of hiding the truth about the real situation outside. She utters the forbidden words about wanting to leave the bunker. The sheriff must arrest his own wife. The mayor tries to find a loophole in the law but finds none. As Allison is prepared for exile, she tells her husband that what they see is just a picture, and the outside world is different. She reminds him that all exiled individuals must clean the external lens. If everything outside is truly dead, she won't do it. But if the world is alive, she will wipe the glass, signaling him. The moment of exile arrives. Allison is fitted with a suit, and a special cloth for cleaning the lenses is placed in her pocket. Holston reads the traditional farewell words and cries as he hears his wife's final words, where she confesses her love for him before stepping outside. Hundreds of people watch her on the monitors. She appears on the screen and cleans the lens, then smiles at her stunned husband and walks toward a dried tree on the hill. But before reaching it, she collapses and remains motionless. 2 years later, the sheriff learns of George's death. He had moved to the lower level with the mechanics after Allison's exile. Holston examines the body and goes to the lower level to talk to a witness, Juliette, now sitting behind bars awaiting exile. She confesses that after meeting her, he became convinced that the figure outside is not Allison. The day of exile arrives. Holston walks down the long corridor as people gather in the dining hall to witness the sheriff's final moments. When he steps outside, he realizes Allison was right. Everything is green, birds are singing, and the sun is shining. He begins to clean the lens. The viewers rejoice. The ritual is complete. The sheriff heads toward his wife's body, but suddenly feels ill. Amid astonished cries, he removes his helmet and crawls toward the tree, but he collapses beside it. The sheriff's death excites the people, but the law enforcers calm the population. Juliette descends below, screaming in anger, feeling deceived by the sheriff. Meanwhile, Marnes reads Holston's last order to appoint Juliette as the new sheriff. He goes to the mayor, who is very upset. Nothing like this has ever happened in the bunker's history, and while she cannot find a replacement, Marnes refuses to take the position. She suddenly realizes she knows nothing about the reasons for the long-ago uprising. Discontent threatens to turn into unrest. People begin buying hammers and mallets, and street fights break out, which the law enforcers barely manage. Later, Juliette confides in her friend, repairwoman Marta, that she is sure George was killed because he wanted to show her something. During their last meeting, he arranged to meet her at a repairman's party, but instead of George, she found a pouch with an unclear relic inside and a note asking her to remember where she had seen the item. The next morning, she learned of George's death. After overcoming the shock, she reported the murder. Together with the sheriff, they inspected the crime scene, and she was sure George didn't leave his life voluntarily. Everything happened deep in the night, and only couriers could have been witnesses. Holston noticed her watch, but Juliette assured him it wasn't a relic. After Juliette shows Holston a toy left by George, she gives him an abridged note and leads him to the bunker's lowest levels, where she opens a secret passage. The walls are covered in writings and drawings from the past. They descend into a vast cave and find a giant machine, which seems to be an underground combine that created the shelter. Juliette realizes how little they know about the shelter and its creators. At the machine, George had set up a living space and stored relics. Juliette finds a wire and a bag with a hard drive and notes written by Allison, which Holston immediately recognizes. It turns out Allison knew more than Holston, but didn't tell him. Holston orders the relics to be destroyed, but Juliette disagrees, which sobers him. He confesses he can't pass the dining hall, as it shows Allison's body under the tree. Juliette admits she didn't show Holston the full note, where George wrote that he found something dangerous. Juliette recalls George joking about using the Combine's cable bundles to swim out of the bunker, but she decides not to risk it. In the morning, Mayor Ruth and Em set off for their rounds while Juliette rushes to fix a generator breakdown. Ruth, Bernard, and the chief judge disapprove of Juliette's candidacy for sheriff. However, Holston chose her. Ruth and Mars visit Dr. Nicholson, Juliette's estranged father, who says she loved mechanics since childhood. Ruth later offers Juliette Holston's sheriff badge. Juliette agrees to take the job after fixing the generator, which involves stopping it temporarily to repair it. The tension escalates as they only have an hour to fix it. Juliette enters the machine to cool it, and after successfully repairing it, the bunker rejoices. Juliette later visits Marta, who shows her the relic George found. Juliette decides it's time to take the sheriff's job. After the mayor's resignation, Ruth collapses and dies, possibly poisoned. Mars believes the criminal tried to poison him, and soon, Bernard appoints Juliette as sheriff without an oath. Juliette is suspicious about George's murder, and with Mars, they investigate. Mars admits to having enemies and shares his suspicion about Kennedy, who may be involved in illegal artifact trading. They fight, but no answers come. Juliette searches his office and finds a folder with her mother's case, from which she learns the truth. She goes to her father and apologizes for her suspicions, realizing that the lawmen are simply watching everyone through cameras. Then, a nurse announces the arrival of technicians. Juliette understands that the lawmen want to install cameras in this office and asks to delay them because she hid George's hard drive here. Taking it, she plans to head down, but all the stairs are cordoned off. At the same time, Lucas receives a note from Juliette and hurries to the meeting. She tells him about the hard drive and asks him to hack it, but Lucas is frightened. Juliette then breaks the mirror and shows him the camera, explaining that they're being watched. Nevertheless, Lucas refuses to help. Juliette again tries to break through the cordon, but the guards demand to inspect her backpack. Suddenly, Bernard comes to her aid. Juliette trusts him and falls into a trap because Bernard is the one who runs the bunker. He clearly heard her words that the sheriff wants to go outside. Juliette tries to refute his words, but Sims testifies that he also heard her desire. It turns out all the deceased were connected to the most dangerous item for the bunker, the hard drive. Juliette attempts to flee, but is quickly caught. Later, Juliette tells Paul that she never intended to go outside. It was Bernard and Sims who slandered her. He advises demanding an investigation. He leads the woman to the station, but she, noticing the onset of an attack, breaks free from his weakening grip and jumps over the parrot. Juliette lands on the lower tier and, regaining consciousness, runs away. Sims accuses Paul of aiding and sends him home. Meanwhile, Bernard notices his keychain glowing and orders the bunker to be turned over to find the fugitive. Paul decides to find Juliette himself. Lawmen begin combing the bunker, and a lower-tier lawman warns Marta about her friend's escape. While others search the workshop, Sims and his subordinates burst into Dr. Nichols' office, but he assures them he doesn't know where his daughter is. Sims's wife and son return to their apartment, where the woman sees a broken camera in the corner. Without showing it, she takes the boy to his room, armed. She begins to inspect the apartment and is attacked by Juliette, who orders her to handcuff herself to a pipe in the kitchen. Juliette then sits at the computer and tries to open the hard drive. Sims reports to Bernard that they found the person to whom Juliette sent a note, and he orders Lucas's arrest. Meanwhile, Paul breaks into Juliette's apartment and finds the encyclopedia in the bathroom. At the same time, Bernard begins interrogating Lucas, who admits that Juliette asked him to open an old hard drive numbered 18. Sims's wife tries to free herself, while Juliette, using Holston's wife's notes, finally opens the drive. Bernard orders them to find the drive with number 18 in the network. Paul, with trembling hands, flips through the pages, staring at the pictures of an unknown world. Bernard is informed of the living quarters where the drive is connected, and Sims, realizing it's happening in his apartment, rushes there. Juliette opens one of the files and sees a message from George. He learned to do this with an old camera and wants to tell her the truth. His story is interrupted by Sims's freed wife, warning that by connecting the drive to their computer, the sheriff has revealed her location. A raider group rushes to Sims's quarters when the screens in the monitoring room start to go dark. He bursts into the apartment only to find Juliette already gone. Juliette finds a young but daring IT guy and asks him to open the hard drive in a way that cannot be tracked. The guy gets to work. Paul burns the encyclopedia in a stove, having torn out several pages beforehand. The IT guy opens the file, and Juliette listens to George's confession of true love and that he found the door below. Bernard is informed of the location where the drive is open. Raiders rush there while Sims's wife admits to her husband that she let the sheriff go, reminding him of their common goal, which is not far from being achieved. Juliette opens another file showing blooming trees and a flock of birds flying outside the bunker. People marvel at the outside world, and the sheriff suggests showing this footage to the entire bunker. But to do this, they need to connect to the main system, which is possible by connecting to the amplifier on the lower level. But lawmen are everywhere. Sims goes to Paul, who explains the search of the sheriff's apartment by his desire to understand why she volunteered for the cleaning. Sims hints that he has long noticed his hand issues. The trio reaches the amplifier and connects the drive, which is immediately reported to Bernard. The observer screens show a beautiful view of nature surrounding the bunker, and people freeze, staring at the monitors. But Bernard orders them to close their eyes and lower their heads. He then inputs some code into the system, and it shuts down. He orders everyone to forget what they saw. When news arrives of the capture of 2 of Juliette's companions, she has escaped again. Bernard realizes that the sheriff is moving through the trash chute. Juliette indeed descends down the trash chute, and Sims orders her to be pushed to the bottom. But one of the women raiders warns her and advises diving into the first hatch she sees. Seeing a metal box coming at her, Juliette jumps down, and trash collectors manage to pull her out before she is crushed. They bring her to Marta and treat her wounds. But Juliette's former boss reports the arrival of the lawman and admits he informed on her. The surrounding people are shocked, but the sheriff approves of his actions. The raiders would have found her anyway and would have destroyed everything. Soon, Bernard and Sims arrive. Bernard accuses her of irresponsibility and smashes the hard drive. He is ready to spare her friends if she agrees to go for cleaning and show what happened to George. The woman agrees to the deal. Bernard and Sims bring Juliette to the observation room, ordering to play the recording of George's last hours. She sees that the man jumped down himself to prevent the lawmen from reaching his comrades and helpers. Later, the woman is prepared for cleaning. Her father comes to the cell, but she cannot tell the truth, as the camera is being watched. Lucas is sentenced to 10 years of work in the mines for aiding the rebel. Her colleagues from the lower tier send her a box of delicious things, where Juliette finds a note from Marta saying that the supply people are great. Paul is appointed sheriff on the day of cleaning. Bernard finally answers Juliette's questions. Her troubles began when she delved into George's case, which threatened the existence of the entire shelter, as the truth could explode people's minds. However, Juliette does not understand why it's forbidden to tell that it's safe outside and that George found a huge steel door at the bottom. Hearing about the door, Bernard ends the conversation and announces the start of the ceremony. The woman says she will not clean the lens, but he reminds her that everyone claims that, and then they all clean. As a last request, he returns her the sheriff's badge. Later, he examines the broken drive, which is only damaged on the outside. Meanwhile, the bunker inhabitants gather in the dining hall, trying to distance themselves from the man who betrayed Juliette. The supply people dress the woman in a suit. Bernard reads the standard formula, and her last words are an assurance of the absence of fear. Juliette heads to the airlock. Stepping outside, she sees the green world, blooming trees, and a flock of birds. She realizes the picture is not real. The woman turns to the lens, pulls out the cloth, but drops it. She then heads to the bodies of the Holston, but she encounters an invisible barrier where the sheriff fell and realizes that everything around is a hologram. Juliette places the badge where people can see the bodies. Juliette climbs the hill where no one has gone before, realizing that the supply people made a special suit for her. Bernard rushes to a secret console, and Juliette sees a devastated Earth instead of a green blooming valley. But looking at her bunker, she leaves beyond the visibility of its inhabitants. The camera moves and zooms out, showing that the bunker's crater is surrounded by dozens of similar craters, identical to Juliette's bunker. This concludes the first season. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.